Computer. Lights. All right. Good morning, everybody. It's Friday.
I love your opening.
Oh, there we go.
It's so.
I think we lost you sort of, Colton, there.
No.
Yeah. Here, move the microphone here and then down just a little. There we go. There we go. Because you're breathing directly into it and it's going, and then we don't hear you.
My bad.
I know. I am doing something weird, so if something
Well,
happens
is it
to
allowed
me,
on? I mean, I can always just like turn you off and turn you back on.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to switch over to a different device and I'll be right back.
Well, there you go. I'll talk to Colton.
Yep.
Not like that's, new or anything. I've always talked to Colton. So fine. We'll just talk to him without you and we'll cry. We'll cry a lot.
No, Bill just informed me he has a meeting and it's supposed to start right now.
Oh, yeah. And I guess you do, says Brent. I guess me, if I've gotta. He'll rejoin in a minute.
Oh, yeah. He'll be back.
So how you doing, Colton? How you doing, Brent?
I'm here.
Right?
No, I got my second shot Wednesday.
Oh.
And it's kicking my butt.
Wow, you're still kind of sucking, huh?
Yeah. Wednesday I was pretty much fine until I got home from work around 12 o'clock at night, midnight. And around that time is when I started feeling effects. And I was yep, here we go. All that brewing of whatever was in my body is finally starting to come out. And then Thursday, I got the worst sleep of my life last night.
Oh, no.
Not last night, but the night before. I had severe chills, body pains, everything. Oof. Enough that I got I think I'd get an hour maybe of sleep, wake up, use the restroom, go back to sleep, be in my blanket fort because it was so freaking cold everywhere. And that was just due to the sickness, not because of the house. It was terrible. And then I slept all day yesterday. It was
It's interesting because the numbers are saying that only 40% or something like that experience the effects. Mm-hmm. But so far it's been 100% of my friends. All of us have had that day.
Yeah, I know it's the second. I know everybody says the second shot's the worst. The first shot, I was feeling symptoms at the end of the day when I got it. I was okay, pretty much what I was feeling Wednesday night. I was oh, hey, I remember this feeling, slight feeling it's I'm sick, a little bit of cold, I'm okay. And then literally everything just wrecked me. And I was just but I've been waiting for this though. I get sick every year.
Right.
It doesn't matter if I get the flu shot or not. I've gotten the flu shot before. I worked at a hospital. You had to get your flu shots, and I would still get the flu every year. It just wouldn't be as drastic. It'd just be a day or two instead of it's gonna knock me out for a week or something like that. And with everybody wearing masks and being more hygienic nowadays, I haven't been sick at all. So I'm they're going to shoot me up with this, and I am literally going to feel it because I haven't been sick at all in over a year now. So here we go. I knew it was going to happen.
Oh, I wonder if that has something to do with it. I wonder if the fact that we haven't all been out there getting 12 colds a year or whatever makes the effects of this particular one markedly worse. Kind of our immune system is we're gonna. It's like all like excited.
You guys,
Yay!
are
Finally,
down
something to
deep
do.
anymore. You guys are all gonna get sick with me now. Okay.
Yeah.
But like, I totally
So
get it. Like, I get that part too of like getting sick. Like I was that whole everybody's now the new thing that I've been hearing from a lot of people is like, well, I think the masks are just like ruining our immune system, and I was like, well, yes and no, maybe. Like, I don't know how true that fact is, but also at the same time, like, we have to first fight off this major virus before we go back to influenza. Like,
but the truth is, I lived in Japan.
yeah,
You're supposed to wear masks when you're sick
I
by
missed that. I wish I
cultural whatever. If you're sick and I mean, even if you have just a little cold, you're supposed to wear a mask, you know, and that's just the nature of the beast. And so we all wore masks, and that's just the way it went.
Yeah.
And I don't see the Japanese being more wrecked immune systems or anything like that. They've been doing it since 1918. That's actually what happened. Is the last time one of these big pandemics went through, the Japanese just decided to all wear masks when they were sick, and they've kept it going. And
Yeah.
100 years later, they're not any different immune wise than we are. So that doesn't pan out.
I just think that personally, I like the mask idea, anyways, like how Japan does do it. Of like, if you're sick or if you know there's a lot of people around you that are sick, you put on a mask.
I have Star Trek masks now. I went and got like really cool Star Trek fabric and ordered it, and we made double layered masks with NASA logos in them, and and they Velcro to the top of my head, so I don't have to worry about them going around the back of my ears. And I mean, I've got really nice masks.
I'm literally picturing you kind of like with the mask on, and it looks like you have a giant ninja cap on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
That'd be
exactly what it
amazing.
looks like.
I gotta
but like,
Actually, that would be cool.
Hello, I'm back.
Welcome back, Pepper.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I like the fact that Colton and I are like, whatever, Pepper's here. And Brent's like, well, I'll be the only one that actually welcomes him back then.
Yeah.
Brent's like, I'm the only one being nice here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I understand. I mean, you guys were in the middle of a conversation. I was the rude one that left originally. So
yeah, you abandoned us. We cried.
No.
Yeah.
It wasn't you were rude. Your husband was rude. He had
Right.
a meeting during your coffee meetings.
Well, I mean, I asked him before we started. I was like, "Hey, do you have a meeting this morning?" And he's like, "Oh, I have one, but it's voluntary." So, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he's
Perfect.
like, "Oh no, I have a meeting. It's at 9." I'm like, "Oh, well."
So not as voluntary.
Okay, no.
I guess it's not as voluntary.
Well, so I mean, it all worked out. I'm out in my living room, and he's in the office, and so yeah. But his work gets to see my desk area for probably the first time.
Because you like
because
abandoned your post.
I had the thing behind me and behind my desk, not behind his. So
So they all get to see
all get to see my desk. Yeah.
There's like an artist nook back there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I like artist nooks. My little artist nook over here is kind of cool too. I've dedicated this zone. Well, this entire room is my office, obviously, but but like there's a special like feel to an artist nook. You know what I mean? It like has a unique. You can walk in, you're like, an artist lives here. I mean, I'm looking behind Colton there. He's got like a mannequin head and paper, and you know what I mean? It's clearly an artist nook.
You live in an artist's house when you see random things that people use to draw everywhere throughout the house.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a very odd thing because, like, I've walked into some artists' homes and I clearly know that their spouse is the one that basically has decorated, because once I got to where they work out of, the spouse has not touched a single thing in that room.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I've been to places where the artist basically, it was the entire artist thing. They weren't married or in a relationship, and you could tell by the way that the house looked. Because Like, you have the art office, but that's usually where they just go and collect the supplies.
Yep.
And then,
That's this section over here.
yeah, and then from that area, it goes like if you're in the living room, depending on the lighting, you'll find sketchbooks and you'll find random pens and pencils. It's very it's one of those things of you don't want to touch this stuff because the moment that someone tries to think that they're with all good intentions, they go to clean.
Yep. And
That
they
is
mess
when
everything up.
that is when you will anger any type of artist I think I've ever met. If you try to clean their space, clean their house, clean anything about what they do, they don't like it.
It's because we haven't organized chaos. I mean,
Yeah.
No, I'm right there with you at the organized chaos part too, but also it's kind of I've kind of viewed that in the sense of with everybody, like friends, roommates, and whatnot, of the place you know where that person frequents the most, you let them deal with it.
mhm. That's their
Like,
personal space.
yeah, but like the living room, the like place where you bring guests to, that's a totally different scenario. But like the
Yeah.
place that the one person goes, like for me, this is the spot I go all the time. It has my computer, has all my artist stuff. Like this is where I pretty much live. And then like my other roommate, like it's his bedroom. I'm like, you never go in there, but that's also their bedroom. But like that's where he lives. And my third roommate, like she has her own little nook literally right above me. That's her sewing area. I'm like, we don't touch each other's areas. But
Yeah.
the living room, the bathrooms, kitchen, stuff like that, like we start clean, like when we clean it, we start cleaning. Like
Yeah.
you just don't.
Yeah.
But like as Pepper was saying, it was like you move one little thing out of the place, they're like, where did my pencil go?
Yeah, like
That was my
like,
favorite pencil.
I think I've lost. What is it? I was living with some people, and I ended up like I couldn't find like a pen, and I think I was in college when this happened. I was a different major than they were, so they were in film, and I was in the graphic design illustration course,
Right.
and I asked like, "Hey, did you guys see any of like this?" And they're like, "Oh no, we haven't seen it." And I'm like, "Huh." 3 days later, one of them's walking around with my favorite pen. I was not happy. Let's just say I did not like those roommates.
Yeah. I think everybody has
Especially
to
in art
spend-
school.
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, and it also, if you're in art school, like art has so many different disciplines that you could be rooming with people who are not even really the same type of person you are. I mean, like, sometimes opposites attract. My wife was a theater major. She had a theater degree and she worked making costume design and stuff like that. But she's also really logical and, very organized in her brain and stuff. And so, she doesn't, it's a pencil. This is just a pen. Why worry about it? So she had to be trained, because you know how things go, especially when you have a kid. Things start to wander away from the public areas. And I had to threaten my child within an inch of his life because he'd keep coming in here and taking pens off my desk and using them to draw and ruining the pen. And it's like,
okay. So on that note, my father is a structural engineer and used to actually do blueprint planning with my grandfather out of our carport when I was really young.
Huh.
And
I feel like you and I have a similar upbringing. You're about to say something that's very similar to mine.
So when you were talking about your kid taking things off of your desk and everything, I was the kid that was taking stuff off of my dad's desk.
Yes, me too. Used to make him mad. But what's so funny is not funny. It's very heartwarming. I went down there, of course, to see him in February.
Yeah.
And while we were there, he was like, well, let's go through all of my drafting supply stuff. Take everything you can use, And
Nice.
he just loaded me up with all of his old drafting equipment. And so much of it is nostalgic for me because of the same reason. I would steal stuff off of his desk, but I had learned to put stuff back because I didn't want to die. So,
That's fair.
no, I was using like his rapidographs. He had no idea I was using his rapidographs. And it's because I had also then opened up the little manual because I wanted them to be clean because I didn't want him to find out I was using his rapidographs. So I had learned how to clean a rapidograph like when I was like 11. That was a thing because I didn't want to screw those drafting pins up, and they made such precise lines. I loved those because this is the late 80s, right? So we didn't have all the cool pins we can just get at Meiningers now,
Yeah.
So I was stealing my
if memory serves me, my dad had rapidographs as well. I never was allowed to
I'm still
touch
listening.
those. I was never allowed to touch those.
Right.
However, I went out and bought a pencil lead holder specifically that my dad and my grandfather both had, and I bought the same brand and everything, so it looks identical. It's not my grandfather's, or my dad's, but when I was a kid, I used to use those, and those are the 2mm, not 2mm. No, I think it's a 2mm Stagler blue pencil lead holders, and I actually I have two of them now, and I will use them, and they're pretty sturdy. So those are great. I stayed away from the other ones because I was so worried about like ruining those. After I think I actually accidentally did ruin one. And I think my dad and my grandfather both were like super pissed because like back in the 80s, they were the equivalent of buying like a $20 pen.
Yeah.
Jeez.
My dad's rapidographs were, I don't know, something. I think he bought them for $30 or something like that in 1972. So it's like $150 today. It's like.
But what I will say is I have my grandfather's and my father's drafting light box.
Yeah.
From
That's
the
cool.
70s.
That's
And
pretty
so
cool.
that I call it the vampire killer.
Yeah.
Like
because it's really
bright.
light.
Yeah. I can't film on it because
my dad's
it's hydrogen
scale.
and light bulbs. So
I'll bet you that unknown caller is probably somebody. That's my dad's scale that I use all the time. But what's so funny is, like, about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I had said, "Hey, Dad, do you still have all your drafting stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, I still do." And I said, "Do you use it?" And he goes, "Well, a few of them, but not everything anymore. I don't have a drafting table." I said, "Well, I've got a 1962 Mayline now that I use for my drafting table." And he's like, "You do?" But, well, yeah. He goes, "I didn't know you draft." And I don't. I do comics, but comics and drafting are really very close.
yeah,
And
they
you,
are.
I never really thought of that. And he just hadn't. But, and then he was like, "Do you want all my stuff?" And I'm like, "Please." And he's like, "Why would you want like 70-year-old, or not 70, but I guess it's like 40-year-old stuff?" He's like, "Why would you want 40-year-old stuff?" And I'm like, A, I remember it from my childhood. And B, it's yours. This is my dad's pens that I'm using right now to make this comic. It's a way to kind of let him live on,
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. So he was, speaking of killing cats.
Don't kill George.
I won't kill George, but I might squirt him with the water bottle. I don't know what's falling back there, but something's falling. George has discovered, I was saying this, he's discovered that behind this bookcase over here, there's a gap about this wide that I put in there specifically so I could put a light in there so that the light can shine up and hit the ceiling. But then I put my armoire right in front of it. So there's now this box with a gap about this big, which he can sneak into to get into this like box in there. And then I can't get him. And then he starts chewing on the cords that are feeding all of the stuff in there. I'm like, really? So
hey, you know what?
Fights with George.
Once George gets big enough, he won't be able to fit. So
He's already pretty big. He's a pretty
How
big
old,
Tom.
George?
Huh?
How old is
He's almost a
George?
year old, right?
He will be a year old on May the 4th be with you. He is a Star Wars cat.
Of course
Totally.
he would get one.
Because he
So
he
you have
was
a
born
Sith
on May
kitty.
4th, and I was like, really? Because the place we got him from is a shelter, and they brought in the pregnant cat, and the cat had kittens, and then they fostered the kittens, so they had the exact birth date. You know, they had down to like the hour that he was born and stuff like that, which was really cool.
That's cool.
Usually, you don't get that information on your cat.
Yeah, most cats, it's like,
Especially from an
I
adoption.
think it was born this day.
Yeah, like December-ish, or
Yeah.
might have been November-ish, but I've got like his literal day that he was born. So, but I think it's funny that he was born on Star Wars Day. I think if he's going to be a cat in this household, I think being born on Star Wars Day is totally appropriate.
There's some kind of sci-fi theme to him.
Got to be something here.
Yeah, he's definitely. I'm agreeing with Brent. He's definitely a Sith kitty.
Yeah. Yeah. He is definitely a member of the dark side. I need to put a little like Darth Vader hat on him.
Could you get away with that? I mean, some cats don't like things on their heads.
He seems to be, well, he of course has had a 10-year-old his entire life who picks him up and carries him around and hauls him all over the house and stuff like that. So he's gotten he grew up being very tolerant. So that's always a good thing. He also likes to pose for pictures, which makes my opening and ending credits much more entertaining. Because he's like, it's camera, I'm good. Just sit here and pose.
I mean, he does
right,
help
3D print a little cat Darth Vader helmet.
That's your first 3D print job right there.
Oh man. Hey, so Colton, did you get Moderna or Pfizer or J&J?
Moderna.
Moderna.
Yep. I got Pfizer's first one recently.
Oh, you got your shot?
So it was completely random. It was right after I dyed my hair gray, which it's already starting to go blonde now. So now it looks like I'm a smoking old man. So we're about to check out at the register at King Soopers, and it's a Sunday. So like I didn't realize they were even open, the little clinic at King Soopers.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the nurse person that like checks people in and out, like came up to me and Bill and were like, we have one vaccine left for the day and we had a canceled appointment. Would either of you want to get the one that get a vaccine? And I was like, and I explained that, hey, I have a seafood allergy. I may interact with the vaccine, and they're like, oh no, it's Pfizer. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's awesome.
The previous day, like I meditated, and I was just like, everyone's talking about this. Everyone that I know is talking about the vaccine or getting a vaccine, or, and I have to be very careful because I have known reactions to vaccines. Mm-hmm. So once you have one reaction, like you always have to be cautious, no matter what.
Well, that's why they make you sit there for 30 minutes.
15.
Well, it's 15 if you don't have allergies. It's 30 if you have known allergies. So they would have made him sit for 30.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I was there. They only had me wait for 15 minutes, but like they basically went through.
That means they weren't that worried.
Yeah, they weren't. With Pfizer, it wasn't like a worrisome because I told them I was allergic to sulfas, eggs, and seafood. And Pfizer doesn't have any known reactions to those three, so they just had me wait the 15 minutes. My arm, I don't know if this was like something like normal. Whoever's had Pfizer can probably answer this. My arm was sore for like 4 days.
Yeah.
Like yesterday was the first day that was not sore.
Yeah.
And I got the shot on Sunday, and by Sunday night it was sore.
Yes.
Mine felt like I had screwed up doing some kind of sword maneuver because it felt like a pulled muscle, like I had pulled one of the deltoid muscles.
Yeah.
And for 3 days, it felt that way.
Yeah. Me and my coworker play hockey, or I used to play hockey. He still does, but if you've ever been cross-checked in
Mhm.
hockey, it's where they take the stick and slam you. Like my arm, like today, it's not that bad, but also with me working at FedEx and like moving boxes all day, like I've worked it out more than most people do.
Yeah.
I know my roommates, well, at least one roommate, talked about her experiences, and she definitely like she was feeling it for about 2 or 3 days
Yeah.
with the arm thing.
Yeah.
My arm hurt for 3 days, so
Hmm.
like I'd pulled a muscle. It really did feel like I had pulled something or been smacked there by a boken. Also,
So
Yeah.
so Bill brought up a very good point because I had just recently dyed my hair gray and it was very fresh. And he's like, I wonder if she came up to you because of your gray hair
And thought
and
that
you
you were
basically
65 or
took the
older.
spot of someone who actually was older and probably needed it.
no,
And
it's
I'm
all right
like,
now because it's
Nah.
16 and
and
up
I'm
now.
like, I think everyone that's around my age is getting it right now. So, like, I don't think that's the case. I think it just so happened that we were just right there at the right time.
Yeah, it was the right place at the
And
right time.
like the previous day, like I said, like it was on my mind. I meditated and I just came to the conclusion if it happens, it happens.
Hmm.
And I was just like, if I'm gonna get it, it just will like somehow happen. Because I didn't even look into getting an appointment yet. And the very next day after that, that happened.
That's awesome though, because I remember you were saying that you probably won't be able to ever get it just
Yeah.
because of your health symptoms and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And I
Yeah.
was kind of hoping like one day I was like, well, I hope you are able to. They finally figure something
Yeah,
out.
because I mean, it's the best part about this is when you get your second one after that one, 2 weeks after that one, then we can start hanging out together and painting at like a Starbucks or something like we used to do
Well, I
back
don't
in
know if
the
we can
dark
hang out.
ages.
I don't know if we can hang out inside of Starbucks, maybe on their outdoor patio.
That also can happen. Although you can go into Starbucks, the Starbucks right here is open. They just require masks.
Well, if it's out in the open, then we can actually sit there and talk and not have a mask.
That's also true.
That's because it's outside.
Yeah.
And also with summer right around the corner.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a great way to spend a summer afternoon. Is that a
Miss doing
Starbucks
that.
with a mocha frappuccino?
And I will lather up all my skin so that it doesn't burn.
Yeah, actually, my wife was making a joke about that because I've been returning back to my martial arts class on Sundays, and last Sunday I got back and I was red and everything, and I'd gotten pretty badly sunburned.
Oh,
It's
was
like,
it outside?
yeah, we meet in a
that's cool.
park.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm
We've
jealous.
actually met in this park since like 2000 or something like that. I get fair weather about it. You know, it gets too hot, I don't go anymore. And it gets too cold, and then my teacher doesn't go anymore because he's Pacific Islander and thin-skinned. And so he's like, nope. But you know, it's like, so it ends up being fair weather for me. I end up usually there just during spring and fall.
That's awesome though. I would go. I want to do a martial arts class outside.
You could join us. It's open.
What kind of
You
martial
just
arts?
it's kenjutsu mostly, so it's sword,
Oh, okay.
but we call it Island of Misfit Martial Artists because sometimes I'll teach bow and sometimes we'll work staff, and we do
Similar
hand to
to
hand
weapon.
from time to time, but
Yeah.
it's hard to do we're getting older now and creakier, and so hand to hand's much more rough when you throw people straight on the grass.
I mean,
So we're not quite as good at it, and you know, but I mean, it's as the guy in charge has said numerous times, he's never had to actually engage anybody in a sword fight, but he has had to use break falls and rolls numerous times in his life.
Mm-hmm.
One time he fell off of a truck while the truck was moving, and he rolled out of it and you know, got up and ran. Everybody who saw it was like, because they got this like he's Superman effect coming from him.
I'm not gonna lie. I've actually had not that exact situation. Mine was with a motorcycle. But learning the martial arts of how to break a fall and stuff like that, and actually be able to roll and keep moving, like it does help out a lot.
When
I
you're
love
when
it.
you're older and you get like all the joints start to creak and groan, I've got to admit though, after an hour or so of break falls, it shakes up all of the whatever's stuck between all your bones. And you're like, "Ooh, I feel better." Boy, it hurt for the first like 30 minutes though.
Everything's all loose again. All
But
right.
everything's all loose.
It's
I got all my joints back.
I know this is gonna sound pretty bad, but when I was studying with the dojo when I was a kid, I actually used to practice break falling on stairs.
Yep.
Because well,
Which makes some
to
sense
be
because that's where
honest,
likely you're going to fall.
yeah, like I went to school. There's no elevators in school. We went up and down stairs the entire time. You needed to know this stuff. I
Mhm.
mean, you've seen Japanese horror animes, like, and what can happen on the stairs.
Right?
So, like, I'm just
There's
like,
a lot
I've
of
seen
stairs
enough
in Japan.
anime to go, there are a lot of things that can happen on the stairs.
yeah, I've done that stuff too.
Which makes me like go, wait a minute, I was referring to tentacles, but
Oh, he was too.
yeah, right? Exactly. And it's like
Especially when I was a teenager.
right?
Ugh.
Somebody was talking the other day about like anime and where you are in the anime world, and they were like, yeah, I'm old enough to remember like Bleach, and I'm like, really? Because I'm old enough to remember Speed Racer.
Yeah, there we
But the very
go.
first anime that I actually watched wasn't exactly Sailor Moon. It was Patlabor.
It was what?
Patlabor.
Oh, Pat Labor, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then that introduced me to Gundam and that whole entire genre, and then I found Sailor Moon and I was like,
Yeah, but
awesome.
it's sometimes it's your first love that always kind of gets deep in here somewhere. I will
Mine
always be a
is,
Mecha Man.
Dot
That
Hack
Yeah.
was my favorite.
Dot Hack is cool, but I saw Speed Racer, but didn't know that it was anime. And same thing with Voltron. I didn't know that was anime.
Battle for Planets.
Yeah, Ninja Team Gatchaman. Right. I didn't know that was anime either. And I watched that. I was actually talking to somebody recently who he also grew up here and was like, yeah, that was on at like 6 a.m. on Channel 2. And I'm like, yeah, it was. And I was like, hey, that means you grew up here. If you were like at 6 a.m. at 2 on Channel 2, that means you were here in Denver during that time.
Yeah.
It's like, but I didn't know about anime until I watched Robotech, and then found out about Macross, which is the Japanese version of Robotech, its original form. And I didn't, and so I will always be, hardcore mecha dude forever and ever and ever because of that. That's like where my first impact was, and that was middle 80s, late 80s.
You know what's really funny is when you look back at those shows, I prefer the mechs from that one versus the new mechs now. And I don't know, like, if it's just because, like, maybe that's the very first thing I saw, but it seemed like the mechs back then, like in the early 80s or mid 80s, they were done in what seemed to be more organic shapes versus the current.
I would have gone the
Gundam
other
and Macross
direction.
stuff. Huh?
Yeah, I know. I would have gone the other direction because I would have said that I felt like the VF1, which is the Valkyrie that they use in Robotech, looks like a F-14 Tomcat.
Well,
but like the VS-22, the VF-22S.
What I meant is they were more grounded in in what you could find in technology at the time.
Right.
Versus like if you watch the latest Gundam, it definitely doesn't look like the like it's feasible right now, because I
Right.
mean, yes, they made the giant mecha suit recently. I don't
Right.
know if you guys have seen that. Like, that's insane.
In Odaiba, yeah. But I mean, this is a
Yeah.
VF1,
Yeah.
right? Which, but the newest ones look more like this. This is a or a VF19. I think this is a
Yeah.
VF19S. And then they've really kind of, I don't know if I have a, I think oh yeah, I do. I have a 22. And then this is a VF22. And I feel like they've just kind of wandered away from airplanes. They look more like spaceships now. And that's not to say I don't like this. Like the 19s are kind of cool, but and yes, I have a box full of little Valkyries. I just have an entire box. But I mean, I know that this does not surprise anybody in this group.
I mean, Valkyrie planes are kind of awesome to look at.
They are.
They usually are like, you can definitely tell which one. You would definitely have to figure out which one you like the most, but you can definitely tell when it was born based off of which one.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've actually
Like,
talked to current Macross fans, and you're right. Some of them are like, but I like the Delta. And I'm like, okay. I'm not really fond on the Delta. And they're like, which one do you like? The one. And they're like, how old are you?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. And it's like, I think I liked the 3. I liked the 1, but I like the 3 a little bit more.
yeah.
So,
And the VF4 is one of my favorites as well, too. The one with the dual pontoons on either side. That one's pretty wicked. You only see that in Flashback 2012, which is the music videos.
and I agree.
Yeah, I know. He's talking. I do have large versions of them. They're downstairs in the Warp Core. I have a Yamato 1/72nd, which is fully transformable. And that's got all of the landing gear folds up and the doors close on the landing gear. It's fully loaded. All the hard points have missiles. The only thing I don't have is fast pack armor for it, and I'm going to get that soon. But since it's the first generation Yamato, I don't know if the fast pack armor will fit. So I'll have to look into that. So that's the other thing I really like about Macross is it's very detailed. Like, all the things that are involved in Macross are so detailed. They've got entire books dedicated to the armament on a VF1, down to what kind of missiles and what kind of explosives they carry, and it's like, it's ridiculous. It's funny.
And we're talking about this, and I'm just also reminding myself in my mind, like, I think this is why out of all of Miyazaki films, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is like a special place in my heart, because the bugs in that are like mechas, very much like organic mechas, with the way that the level of details and the way that they move.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to admit, like, those bugs are awesome.
Oh,
did really cool stuff with that. Yeah, you're right.
Brent's like, you could make an RPG out of it, and I'm like, yeah, we used to. That was my first role-playing game. Was Palladium's Robotech.
Really?
Which is one of the other reasons why I know all of the missiles all the way down, is because, of course, I started out as just a Valkyrie pilot in Robotech, and the guy that was GMing. This was the 80s, so we didn't really know how to GM properly, and it had just branched from D&D. So, we were just now starting to get other games that weren't, you're crawling in a dungeon, going for a dragon,
Weren't just D&D based, yeah.
Yeah, so we were just kind of getting into these branches, and so we didn't know how much information you needed to do. So he made me do homework every night and prep my loadout for my Valkyrie, so that the next day when we were playing, we knew exactly what its loadout was when it went into battle.
That's cool.
It was actually, looking back on it at the time, I was like, this is so aggravating and annoying. But now looking back at it, I'm like, actually, that was kind of cool. It was pretty wicked.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just think if they if someone ended up making an RPG, fan based RPG of Bellatrix Rising.
right, that'd be cool. I'll have all that detail.
You would have to provide that detail in the comic or make a book about the details.
Well, and being that the point of reference that I generally go from is Macross. I mean, this is the manga that I am working out of anyway, just by nature. And I mean, so obviously so that it's sitting right here on my desk, right? Yeah. And they've got that in the back there. In fact, that was what I was thinking of going to do this next week. Something that's common. Now, hey, this gets us into what we're doing for work. Good job. Nice transition, Pepper. Well done. But one of the things I'm looking to do is it's common in manga, especially highly tech mangas, to have 2 or 3 pages in the back of each manga that is a super deformed version of either the chief engineer or the pilot or something like that, explaining some technology. You know, he or she will sit there and point at like a chalkboard, and on the chalkboard will be graphics and stuff like that. It's sort of nice segue. So it's sort of a way to kind of explain some of these back technologies, and Macross is no different. In the back of these manga are always something going on here. Like here's an entire thing on the VF1's armor. You know, there's something in here all the time. Or like this, where it explains all of the different aircraft and spacecraft that are used in there. It's not uncommon to have something like that in the manga. So I was thinking of doing that because I really want to pin down the technology of my faster than light travel, because it's got a lot of specific rules, which I use to propel the story, you know. Like computers don't work in FTL. Yeah. And so because of that, you have to have a pilot on the stick while you're in FTL. And the pilot has to be a human, you know. And
can't be a hologram.
Yeah, can't be the AIs, and it can't be like anything that's silicon based doesn't work. So 2 of the alien life forms have to go to sleep during FTL 2. So I've got like 2 alien life forms that are part of the Federation, and those 2 can't be pilots. They can never be pilots for FTL because of that very thing. So I wanted to write this all out, because one of my main characters, of course, is the new pilot on this ship, and she's the POV character for the comic. So I'm going to use her. I'm going to draw little super deformed versions of her talking about how FTL works. And I think I want to do that for next week. That'll give me something Bellatrix Rising to do that's not involved in the scripting, which is what I'm in the middle of right now, is scripting hell. So that's that. While we're at it, I'll mention that I have merged 2 stories together to make one comic. So I've got now the bones together for issue number 1. It's going to be 32 pages, and I've already set up Clip Studio to have all 32 pages plus the covers in it.
Nice.
I don't know if anybody here has ever used Clip Studio's story writing mode function.
Nope, not yet.
Well, I haven't either. So I shall forge this for you and tell you and report back to you about how miserable or not miserable this is. But one of my big complaints for Clip Studio is I don't like the way it handles fonts. So I'm hoping that I can end run around this by using its story editing version. Because right now, when you add a bubble, it always defaults to whatever you were set at the last time you opened Clip Studio. So if the font was set for Arial at 15 point or whatever, then when you open Clip Studio this time, every time you set a bubble, it'll always be at Arial at 15 point. And you have to go back through and set it for your comic font and set it for the right size. And it's really irritating.
I'm just gonna say that is also irritating from Adobe side because they do the same thing.
I haven't had that problem with Photoshop. Photoshop, where it sets it for whatever it is, and then it's set.
I don't do my lettering in Photoshop.
Yeah,
So
I did all my lettering in Photoshop.
Yeah, I do my lettering. I will do it in InDesign because I did try doing it in Illustrator before I got accustomed to using InDesign.
InDesign, that's not a bad idea.
And actually, after I started using InDesign, I realized that a lot of the things I was doing in Illustrator, as far as layout and stuff like that, definitely made it so that we could that it definitely made it a lot easier for me.
I feel like Brent is allergic to Facebook. He moves over to Twitch and then says hate allergies. I'm like, you allergic to Facebook?
Yes, everyone should be allergic to Facebook,
right?
I mean, and I'm not gonna lie, that the social media platforms right now, I mean, Facebook is like kind of a minefield.
Yeah, they really are.
Twitter, sometimes I have to be careful on what I click on or who I click on, because if I click on the wrong person, I end up getting porn now.
Wow.
So, like,
that's pretty rough.
I have some interesting things that happen.
I didn't mean to bring that up straight up, but I guess that's the way that works. So,
what was that?
Oh, watching in big TV while laying in bed. Gotcha. So I was gonna show one. Brent was saying that I have done a Bible, and he's right. I have something like, I think we're up to about 150 pages worth of just notes that I have taken in the world. But I was going to say, this is what I did. And it's hard to read. It doesn't matter. You don't have to read it. It's not important. But this is a history timeline from the day when Earth was destroyed all the way through to current day in the story, because I was not sure whether we could survive on 65,000 people. And so I had to go through and do a census on the human race every 10 years for the next 500 years. So that's what I did. And then found out here that at the end, our population is 20 trillion people, 932 billion, 413 million, 77,701. So
you did all that math.
I did all of that math, and I got super hyper focused.
Like, apparently,
yeah.
As only ADDers can do sometimes. I was like worried that if I screwed up the math, it would be what somebody else would do it. You know what I mean? And so if I screwed up the math and said, I don't know, we've got like 2 trillion people, then somebody else would go, no, have you ever figured out what 1.02% growth every year for 500 years would be? And I'd be like, yeah. It'd be 20 trillion and you're off. And I'd be like, so
yeah,
awesome.
I think if humans actually stayed on this planet, I don't think we would definitely overgrow the planet eventually.
Oh, we're going to overgrow the planet. Right now, we have a growth rate of 2.3%. And I actually had to back us off, because at a growth rate of 2.3% per year, I was getting to the point where it was a freaking bizarre exponential growth pattern.
You know what's really funny is both me and Bill, we get statistics about baby births now. Yeah. And it's just because of the adoption process. 2020 was like the lowest birth rate,
which makes sense.
By far so far, like since 2000 started.
Right. But I mean, when we're talking about the rate that I was using here, I'm talking about birth rate minus deaths.
Yep.
So if you have like 15% birth rate and you have a 10% death rate, you have a 5% growth.
Yeah.
Right. And so what happened was modern medicine is astonishing, because we that's what's putting us at this positive 2. And the biggest numbers we've had were positive 3 in the late 70s, early 80s, and it was an upper 3% growth rate. But at that rate, I mean, really, honestly, by 2055, here we're going to be getting really, really alarmingly close to like 100 billion people if we're not careful. And there's a reason why people are like freaking out and saying we've got to do something about our birth rate, because we just won't have enough people. We won't have enough space on this planet. It's just, it's the growth rate of 3%. It's compounded interest. It's like,
I mean, and there's a lot of people now that are like, hey, I want to go to Mars.
Yep.
I want to go to Mars because I don't want to be on this planet.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of bummed that I'm clearly one generation too early, because my kid could go to Mars, but I don't think I'm going to ever be able to make it to Mars. You know what I mean?
I was dumb when I found that out too. I was like,
yeah.
I think I'm like on the borderline of like the.
You could probably still do it if we get moving, but I mean, it's interesting. I've been reading Mary Cole's Lady Astronaut series, and she's got an alternate history where a meteor strikes Earth in 1952 and wipes out Washington, D.C. and pretty much all of the eastern seaboard.
Okay.
And then starts global warming. It starts a nuclear winter first, but then all of the water that was ejected from the ocean begins a global warming cycle. And so Earth starts to immediately warm up to a degree. And they knew that by the 70s or the 80s, it would be too hot to live on Earth. And so they ramp up the space program. And by 62, they're on Mars, and it's like they're setting up the first colony on Mars. And it's all about, a 50s woman who was a WASP in World War II being the first female astronaut, because they don't have time to screw around. And so, it's this fight between discrimination, which you get from the 50s, and we don't have time to screw around, throw everybody in the ship.
I'm laughing at Brent.
I mean,
actually,
I
we
like
live in
Brent's
a
take.
cloud city on Venus.
Yeah.
I just want to point out Venus is like harsher, is way harsher than Mars. However, I do like the old comics, the old Golden Age comics, where they had like humans living on Venus, because it was so like when you look at the facts that you have now about Venus and then you look back at it, it's so ridiculous of what we thought of for that planet.
Or for Mars.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mars
is a little bit more believable now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because
it's kind of like I kind of want to see what happens because of like Battle Angel. If you ever read that, actually read it and not just watched what they've shown.
Oh no, I've read it.
Yeah, Mars just becomes a war planet. Like, I'm kind of curious on what's going to happen.
Are you reading Mars Chronicle?
Are they continuing? Do they continue it?
Mars Chronicle is Golly on Mars as a little girl.
Oh shit! So we actually finally get her backstory that we never ever got, really.
And it's all on Mars in the domes.
I haven't read it yet.
Yes, I will start reading it.
And she's having to learn Panzerkunst now because she's little, and so it's really cool. I'm actually right now on issue 5. Yeah, no, Yukito Koshiro is another one of my core artists. It's Haruhiko Mikimoto, and then it's Yukito Koshiro, and those are pretty much my core artists. So I've got all of Battle Angel downstairs in both Japanese and English.
Did you watch the new movie or no?
I did, and I liked it. They did a pretty good job.
I was curious on what you thought, because I know they made a few changes in it, but he was actually on set. He was actually directing a little bit. He's like, no, actually, he made a few changes that actually I kind of liked how some of the changes were, just because I'm like, no, these actually make a little bit more sense. And
even Yukito Koshiro has said, when he first started Gundam back in the 80s, he was like he made a couple of stupid young mistakes because he was young.
Oh yeah.
And he likes the changes. One of the big changes is that in the original comic, Ito names Golly after Ito's cat.
Oh yeah. I was like something. Yeah, I do remember that.
And Kishiro has said he really liked when they took to the OAVs. They made 2 OAVs, and in that they changed it so that Golly was named after Ito's daughter. And he liked that a whole lot better. And he says, I kind of wish I could go back in time and fix that in the manga. You know, so there's some changes where you're like, yeah, well, they were changes, but even Kishiro thinks that that's a good idea. You know.
Yeah. I also like how they actually incorporated Motorball a little bit more into it, because in the actual like live side of it, like Motorball would have been way more relevant than just like that chapter.
Yeah. Well, she stays in Motorball for 3 issues.
Oh, I know.
So what? That's 900 pages. So
yeah,
she's there for a long time.
I mean, and I think the biggest thing that people that when I talked to, I got the chance to talk to one of the voice actors from the original OVA.
Oh, nice.
And that same voice actress was in the film, playing her same role because she was a robot.
Okay.
So they just needed her voice, but she became an extra as well. And I actually liked the way that she described it. She was like, it honored a lot of the original OVA and the manga to the point of it. She knew it was going to be good. The only problem that I have with the movie is from people who never saw the original or read, and they were like, "Oh, this was not the greatest. This wasn't great." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand.
You have no idea.
If you saw this back when it was like, it was Cartoon Network showed Battle Angel Alita on their Toonami spread.
I would assume it was heavily edited.
It was definitely edited.
I mean, just the dog scene alone is enough to give nightmares.
I mean, that's on how I was able to.
You should read the manga.
My mom to allow to rent it at Blockbuster.
Yep.
You know, like she was like, "Oh, so this is like something that you watch on Cartoon Network?" Oh, okay, sure. You know, and then my mom watched Tekken 3, the anime, with me, and she's like, "How do you watch stuff?" Because, like, basically, you know, even bloodier than Battle Angel Alita. So
yeah, I mean,
that is my friend's story. With first anime, they were into anime and everything, and they were at their friend's birthday. Well, friend's mom was like, "Hey, you guys all like anime?" And so she just grabbed one off the shelves at Blockbuster.
Uh-oh.
Ninja Scrolls.
Oh no.
Oh god.
So you have all these people sitting in the basement, and it was a specific. It was actually my friend. It was an all-girls party. So you have all these like 10 girls sitting downstairs watching anime, and it's Ninja Scrolls, and mom and them are upstairs, have no idea what they're watching, and everybody's just like, "What the fuck?"
Right.
Well, I just want to
early days.
Which Ninja Scrolls are we talking about? The very first one, where basically like it's like straight up like very bad.
Yes, the original Ninja Scrolls that everybody could get, and like there's rape and everything in it. Yes.
Yep.
That's what they were watching at like 12 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was.
What I do like about the very first one is, even though that they do show that scene, they show a follow-up scene that basically makes karma come back to the person who did that act so bad. But I felt bad for the character.
Yeah.
Because like she was definitely a pawn throughout that entire film.
Yeah.
And I hated that.
And that was the point. That was the
Mhm.
point. I mean, that was what they were trying to get to. There was that she was a pawn, and I mean, they weren't doing it to exploit her. That was part of her story.
Yeah.
And that's actually something I respected about that particular movie. I mean, there's a little to respect in that movie, but some of it was in the writing. So,
Yeah.
When we first started doing NDK back in '97, that was one of the things that we had a real problem with, because we'd see these moms bringing in like their 5-year-old kids, and they're like, it's cartoons, so I'm just gonna let them run around. And we knew we had like Urutsuki Doji running in some room back there. That's tentacle porn. And we're like,
Mhm.
oh, this isn't going to end well. This is not going to end well. And so we had to post people to start turning people away who were bringing in their 5-year-olds. And they would get so mad because they're like, this is a cartoon festival. Why are you turning us away? We're like,
This is not what you think it is.
anime. Nope, don't know what it means. And I'm
I
like,
mean, the very first story of NDK that I ever heard of was like basically someone describing like someone excited and waiting for essentially a giveaway with what was it, dragon penises?
probably. Would not
They're like
surprise
That would
me.
not
they had like
surprise me.
100 tickets to win like this grand thing, and I was just like, how big
I mean,
was it?
I mean,
Like,
honestly,
where are they
the
sticking that?
NDK that runs today is nothing like the NDK that I was working at
Oh,
in the very beginning, and it really isn't, and it's so weird.
Like the NDK I remember when I first started going, I think it was like 2 or 3 years later, like you guys actually had to ban Yowie paddles
Yes,
because people were actually running around and using Yowie paddles, and there were my friends that were doing it too. It was funny, but they were doing it out of consent. There were people
right.
doing it no consent, just
Well,
walking
and we
right
had
up.
we had some problems with that. That's the same reason why we have our weapons policy the way it is because it wasn't ever the people who were fighting together. It was people around them who would call the Denver police and
Oh yeah,
bypass. They'd bypass operations, and so all of a sudden, I'm in operations and I've got cops standing there, and I'm like, "The heck's
how do I?
going on?" And it was, well, these two kids had swords and they were going to kill each other, and I'm like, they were right there in front of operations. They both were wooden swords, and they were both experienced martial artists.
Mhm.
Oh, well, they didn't know that, apparently, whoever called in. I'm like, people, stop calling.
Yeah,
And
because there's
what was
one
happening
person
was,
that's calling in and destroying everybody's fun.
right. So then we had to start
Well-
peace bonding people. And then when we did, we were like, okay, here's the deal, guys. Every time we'd had this like speech for them. We're like, you can't hit each other, even in jest, because apparently we have too many people who think it's real. And so
Mhm.
we're sorry, not our rule. We wouldn't have done it if we had any other choice. However,
It's kind of like if you ever gone to see Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh yeah.
So there are several shows that I've been to, and the first one I went to was awesome. It was great. People threw condoms at you. You got like squirted with water. You were climbed on.
we
Like,
used to have water
you
in
know,
Jergens.
yeah, like everything was like grand, and everything you expect from a Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right?
The following week, the show got a message from the theater basically saying, you can't do this anymore. You can't throw condoms at people. We had an angry woman, and they asked, do you know what sexuality she was? She was with her girlfriend. And so it was like, so an angry lesbian that got a condom for a man had a problem getting a condom and reported it.
Yeah.
Also, by
then-
going to a show that is notorious for this stuff, which doesn't make sense to me,
And
why there would be a
extremely
problem.
LGBT friendly as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
Right. Has always
You know?
been. But that's something I don't get. Like, it's the same thing I'm seeing. And by the way, Brent, yes, NDK is happening this year, and we're already scared to death of it because not because of COVID, but because it's one of the first cons out of the gate. And so we're going to
Yeah.
get flooded. Luckily, we're at the Gaylord. There is that. So
Yeah.
that's a plus.
I mean, that's when
Um,
we talked about that last time or whatever. Like, that's awesome. Like, I totally understand why you guys are doing it and all that stuff.
Well,
but like,
the
still,
good
like,
news is that once you're vaccinated,
yeah,
it's up. You're safe to get COVID if you need to. It's going to be like the world's worst con crud. But that's fine. If you're not vaccinated, you either can't or chose not to. And if you chose not to, that's not my problem. Which one is Guy? Me. Blue Sin. I don't know who that is. Anyway,
that guy is guy.
That guy.
So,
Hello, guy.
hello. I don't know who Blue Sin is, so I don't know your moniker. So, anyway, but welcome to the show. Welcome
Hello.
to the. Oh, you're coming in
Yeah.
from Twitch too. That's kind of cool. So anyway,
yeah.
I was gonna head. There was something I was gonna say real quickly here, and I got kind of sidetracked by this whole thing. Oh yeah, there are people who. Well, welcome to the show. There are people who like join things. Like we've got this problem with the Trekkie community. You'll get people who join the Star Trek Discovery Facebook page and say, I hate Discovery. And I'm like, why are you here? I mean, it's okay to have an opinion. It's okay to not want to do this. But all you're really doing is trashing the page. And I don't know why you choose to do that. And it's the same thing. Why would you go to Rocky Horror if you're sensitive about sexy things? Because like
Or just
that's going to happen through all of Rocky Horror.
Another thing, like they used to do, like for new people to the show, like basically they used to call them like fresh meat.
Yeah.
They used to
and
call them
stuff like
virgins
that.
in here in Denver.
And virgins and stuff.
Yeah.
Eventually they had to stop that as well.
Right?
Because and this is what like gets me is like, okay, if you have a problem with something and you don't know what's going on when you go, that's on you. That's not the show's problem.
Right.
But if you try to purposely like change the show because you felt uncomfortable,
Yeah.
maybe you should have been up on that stage during the virgining.
The
Yeah.
virgin. Preaching
So-
right now.
Yeah, we're kind of in that point.
We're kind of
But no, I mean, like, it's that, like,
we're aggravated about that.
I mean, do you
it's a
not
little
do
aggravating.
research before you go, before you go to something that you've never been to? Like, someone's
Yeah.
like, oh, hey, you want to go do this? And I was like, okay. I would at least kind of look it up. Going, what am I getting into?
Well, and I
Right.
mean, of course, when I went to Rocky Horror, it was the early '90s, so we couldn't really Google it. But it's not like my friends didn't tell me what was going on.
Oh
At
no!
least got a
My
warning.
very first show, I was told like, be prepared to have a dildo in your face.
Right?
Like,
it's going down, man. It's going
Yeah,
down.
I mean, I had narrators that were female, male, trans, like, and
Everything was going on.
Everything went on. They had Dr. Frankenfurter was like literally was, had been played by a female, male. Like they interchanged the genders on all the characters.
Right.
One time, the Janet and her husband were switched. So Janet was played by a male, and the husband was played by a female. So it was fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, that's, and I feel like when it comes to Rocky Horror, that's the way you should expect it to be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like what you expect Rocky Horror to be. So I agree with what Brett's saying over there. Who doesn't know about Rocky Horror, right?
Yeah. Like you at least have one friend that has always, and I agree with Brent on this. You always have at least one friend that has been in a performance.
Oh yeah, I have two. That's actually how I kept.
I probably do, and I just don't realize it.
Yeah, I in high school, I was with my friend group was almost exclusively female. That's just by the roll of the dice. But two of them were playing Magenta, and what else did she play? She played somebody. Not the leads though. So, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Two of them were in the Denver Rookie, or down there at the Mayan.
Magenta is a hard roll.
Magenta's a hard roll, and that particular person had moved on to Ren Fair and performed in Ren Fair for "You Are a Stunning Human." Yes, well, there's something very stunning about Pepper.
Thank you.
You know what? I need to like put your info up too while I'm at it though.
Pepper is Pepper is
yeah. So if you want that Pepper is the one on the bottom, and if you want to see information on his art, you can find him at Pepper DeLuca. Colton is, I'm doing that right now. Colton is up here, right here, and you can find his art there. Obviously, my information is up here at the top, which has kind of gotten covered, and down at the bottom. And I don't actually know if I've got a tag for myself anymore. I may not. I used to. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's at GS Davis Art. Boop, boop, boop. We just have to get the stuff out of the way down on the bottom. It's all right. We've had some unique visitors before who we were like, yeah, but you're doing fine. We're fine. We're good.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Normally we do art stuff, which we should probably get to because
let's segue back. We kind of went on a tangent because of probably my mouth, if I had to guess.
It's all good. So this week I did, like I showed before, I did parts of my world building, built the timeline, that history timeline. So it's kind of funny. I wanted to real quickly put up when I was talking about the timeline where I'd done the history of how many people we multiply like rabbits. But the thing I was trying to do was then also try to call that back. So I ended up putting in wars, and at one point in time I blew up a planet, and so that helped call the march of of the humans across the galaxy. So that actually was good because it added some more texture to the story. Now there's a couple of more wars that came up. All of the AI stuff that we started like 3 weeks ago, Colton, I don't know if you were here when Pepper and I were talking about the AIs, but one of the things that I'm doing in my story is treating AIs as if they are people. So
that's cool.
The AIs etch their own like starting discs, and that's their children. So they're the only ones allowed to make new AIs, and so the culture treats them as if they're their own life form. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, AIs are part of the culture. Well, because I was doing the history, I managed to come up with when that AI war happened, what happened for the fallout of that, all of the laws that sort of went into place back and forth, and when Unity started and when the Commonwealth started. So I've got like all my world building has set up all the players for the comic, so that when we get into the comic, there's a rich background to all of this. We do, so all three of us are comic artists right now. That doesn't mean we're not opposed to having other artists on here. It's just that's how we all met. Really. Yeah, we just all met. So we're Colton and I belonged to a group called Red Team Go for a while there, and Pepper we met through sort of that group. And Red Team Go is a local Denver group of artists which work together to try to get comics created. And Pepper we just kind of adopted because he was out in the cold and freezing, and so we adopted him and brought him home. We fed him. We gave him water.
I had been around you guys in like the comic, the convention scene, and And eventually, I think it was Andrew Mark that basically was like, "Hey, no, Pepper, you can come over here too. You're an honorary member."
Right?
I was never
Well,
like officially.
what's so funny is we don't really have like a super hard line of membership. Just
Yeah,
don't be a jerk when you come
That
to the
was pretty
meeting.
much
Yeah.
it.
That's pretty much the only rule. So it's
Yeah.
not like, you wouldn't have been welcome at all the meetings and we would have just adopted you anyway. Um,
And I
the-
did go to one meeting. I'm one of those notorious people. Like I like finding people to talk to when I go to drawing
Mhm.
meetups, and I just noticed that a lot of people just don't like talking at them sometimes.
It's also so like the thing I did notice with the Red Team Go group back in the day was that if you weren't a regular, a lot of them didn't want to talk.
yeah,
I also think it's they had no idea how to like a lot of people just didn't have an idea of how to start a conversation.
it's true. So do you have artwork that you can show Colton and Pepper? Because I can bring up mine.
Well, it's in the room with my husband.
With yes,
going
probably
on, so
not.
I can't exactly go.
But this is one of the characters that I'm working on there. I'll show Colton's here in a second. I'll center him.
I'm gonna go see if I can do mine.
I've got your hand,
Or
Colton.
Woo!
Yeah, sorry, I
He
was
drops
doing,
the computer.
I was trying to fix something. Let me think here. What have I done? What have I done? I'm trying to think of what I can show.
I'm just going to call you Blue. Blue, because that's cool. I agree. And that's actually the point behind it. One of the things that we had discovered was a lot of people don't know some of the basics of comics that you don't think about, like how wide and how tall should your pages be?
Or
What
why do
paper
people
should you
use it?
use?
Yeah,
You know,
why do people use this like material? Why people use that?
why do we use
Yeah.
pens? Why not just use ballpoints? Why do I have to use a felt tip pen? Things like that, just basic. It has nothing to do with your skill level, has nothing to do with and that's actually why I do this show every day too, is so that people can just join me and ask questions if they want, or they can just watch me draw. Because except on Fridays when we all get together and check in on each other to make sure we're all still alive and not dead, and also make sure we're still working, which is sort of a pointed thing I'm looking at Colton for right now. He's like, "Are you working?"
No, I was actually enjoying the project. I finished Sunday.
Good.
I'm gonna see. It's actually a good test for me right now to see if this program actually isn't coded to not be able to show anything.
Yeah. So
you know how some programs you can't live share or whatnot because they have it coded in there or whatever.
Really?
Yeah, there are a few programs that are that way. I think Illustrator's that way.
What are we talking about? I'm sorry, I'm coming.
Direct coding so you can't share it on live.
Yeah, so like you can't do like a live video on like certain programs because they actually have it coded where you can't actually show your screen.
Huh.
Yeah, Adobe Photoshop is like is good to share. However, I think InDesign
Illustrators,
has the
no.
Illustrator.
Like
Yeah,
Discord.
that's like a big node. So
You mean share on Discord? Because I'm still new to Discord. Discord and I are like
No,
weird.
to like Twitch.
Wait.
Discord,
Wait. I'm gonna highlight your screen. Stand by. There we go. So this is Pepper's work. It's very furry. That's a very furry thing you've got going there.
Well, this
I
is
like
an
the
old
fun
story
fact.
called Honey Squad. So this is like my anthropomorphized like bears and bees and raccoons and cats and all sorts of animals. But like the main squad, the Honey Squad, they're all anthropomorphized bears.
Right.
And I came up with this before Beastars and everything, but like basically it's a story about this group called Honey Squad, and they're up against another group called the Hive Syndicate. So
the Hive Syndicate. All right.
yeah, the Hive Syndicate is basically controlled by a mind controlling bee queen.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So essentially what happened was one of the characters originally, my original thoughts for it was like
Blue's joining.
was basically like the father of one of the characters who is very, very rich and
Right.
connected in the community, met this lovely bee anthropomorphized bee, and no one thought twice. They just thought she was a normal bee, but she had mind controlling abilities. Ended up forcing like a I choose.
Colton's over there trying to get his OBS to work.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's what he's doing.
am I back? Because I just had some connection issues.
Yeah, you had connection issues, and you've gotten a couple of words that kind of chattered, but
I'll just stop talking about it. I think that's
It's all good.
basically what.
it's all good. You're working fine.
But
Good.
yeah, I did my 10-day art challenge that I was elected by Christina Badhand.
And that
This was
was
the result of the challenge right here. Is I just redrew a whole bunch of characters.
Nice.
I interpreted that to be because Raph tagged me for it, and I interpreted that to be that we could put any 10 pieces of art up.
This is the second time that I've been tagged in a 10-day art challenge.
Frames.
I actually think that I may actually ink this before I think about framing
Right.
any of it. And then I also have black and white Copic markers that I think I'll take it to shading and stuff like that.
My Copic. I need to think about using my Copics more.
Um,
I've been concentrating so much on watercolors recently that I've kind of abandoned my Copics.
I think I have like kind of this really weird relationship with the Copics. I love using them.
Right.
However, because I use them so infrequently, at times it can get a little overwhelming when I start using them again.
Right.
I get that.
I try to tend to stay in one color grouping with them. Like I don't like using multiple colors because I don't like the outcomes.
Have you seen my
with it
Copic
very much.
rig? I've got this Copic rig where I've got them all set up, but it
Cool.
folds out like this. It's kind of
Oh.
cool.
Where'd you get that?
I got it from Michael's. They had a day where things were on sale,
Yeah.
and so you can like set it like this, or you can fold it all the way out. I love this thing, but it's
Yeah.
for holding alcohol markers. That's its job.
Yeah.
So it didn't say Copic specifically, but it's for holding alcohol
yeah.
markers.
It still works.
Like you can also buy a set. I can't remember the letter of the set, but it actually comes like all the spaces are like pretty much filled,
Right.
and
True.
it comes with that container.
Yeah.
But I don't.
It's a
know
great paint
anyone
holder
who
too,
uses
says
all
Brent.
So-
Copic is a type of alcohol marker.
Alcohol marker. So
Markers.
there's a type of marker that's alcohol based, right? And these markers
Oh no, you spelled it correctly.
these markers are infused with alcohol, and the reason that's significant is water warps paper. So when we put water markers down, it'll warp the paper and push it up, but the alcohol evaporates so fast that the alcohol markers, you can put a lot of color down and it will lay the color down and then evaporate before it warps the page.
Yeah.
So
This is Bristol, so this would be perfect for alcohol markers. Not so much for watercolors because
Right.
it's not graded
Bristol,
for that.
well, and that's the thing. When you get to watercolors, you can kind of see it. If you look at this page, it's warped up. And that's just, I was just doing a color wheel, right?
Yeah.
So, and you can see how it's kind of warped the page a little bit and pushed it up in the center. It's hard to, you can actually kind of see the shadows here in my lights,
Yeah.
where you can kind of see the bumps under here, because the water will will get into the paper, and then it will soak up, right?
Yeah.
You can use the Copics though, and they will mix like watercolors because they've got what they call a colorless blender, which is this guy here, and all this is just alcohol.
Yep.
So they'll put that in there, and
There's
then
a
you
lot of
can mix
interesting
them
tools out there,
and
Blue.
blend. And that's how
you can also like what I also like about Copic markers is you can actually they have a way where you can make it custom Copic colors
Mhm.
where you can actually buy the refill packages and actually drop like the specific like color variations that you want. You just have to keep track of what you put in there.
Yeah.
I just want to point that out. You have to like keep track of it because then when you go to refill it, you have to refill it with the same ratio.
Right.
I didn't know Copics were easy to wipe off of laminated sheets, and
Same.
that would be a real waste. But like things like this, it's kind of hard to see. But this is Haruhiko Mikimoto, who he's done a number of different things, but this started as a Copic piece. He's got watercolors in here too. He mixes some gouache. He's got a number of different things going on these pieces now, but he will use alcohol markers to lay down the first layers because they won't warp the page. So
Mhm.
it's
That and alcohol markers are actually good to intertwine with watercolor and gouache, and a lot of manga artists do use all three.
the problem with alcohol markers is that they don't last forever. So if you do alcohol marker pieces, the ink will ultimately start to fade over 10, 15 years. So it's not intended to be, in fact, a lot of artists will tell you, don't use alcohol markers for permanent pieces. Use them only for temporary pieces. But the thing is, and I'll get another one of my pieces up here because I use it with alcohol markers. It's one of my favorites.
They are very pricey. You're not wrong.
They are extremely pricey.
You can get really good deals every now and then. I will say, like on the sets and stuff, if you want to just try to get like a small set, like
Yeah.
like a gray set or a skin tone set or whatever you want, like you can find some amazing deals on the sets. But
That's how
as
I got all mine.
per marker, it will go really high very quickly.
Right.
So that's how I got mostly all my Copics was through deals and whatnot, like at Michael's or whatnot, where they're like, "Oh, we're gonna do these half off this week." I'm like, "Sweet, sold."
Yeah.
You know that $200 set? Oh, I have an extra $100. I can.
Oh,
$100 is much better.
It's 50% off on refills for Copic.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Oh God.
Because refills, I don't know if you realize this now, but instead of they changed the way that the refill bottles are, so now they're round and cylinder that looks exactly like the same, like as the markers themselves now. So you can only get 6 yields instead of like the 10 before.
The like square cube that they used to give out.
Yeah.
When did they start doing that?
That just recently, like in 2020.
Really?
It's less plastic use for the refills now.
I guess that makes sense.
And you have to remember, this is Copic is based in Japan, I believe.
Yes.
So they're very eco-conscious when they're making their products. Like I have a Ricoh printer, and I can send back my Ricoh printer pigment holders to actually get recycled by Ricoh themselves.
Right.
And like I don't get new ink or new pigment things, but someone else will. You know, like the plastic stuff that's used there is always rebranded and put out as like basically secondary usage.
Right.
I did like that about Japan too, with the like how eco-conscious they are with a lot of their like with their trash specifically.
Get back to work.
Okay. Bye.
We'll see
Have
you
a great
later,
day.
Blue. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Been awesome. I can't apparently load anything right now because apparently my OneDrive has decided. I turned off my OneDrive because I was having a lot of issues. So, and but I just restarted it and now I can't load anything. That's what you're hearing me go through the bling bling. That's it saying, hey, you're not connected to the internet. Connect to the internet and then you can download this picture. And I'm like, I'm broadcasting, right? So clearly I'm connected to the internet. I'm like,
Well, getting back to things that I liked about Japan when I was in art school.
right.
I actually do you guys ever remember a monthly magazine called New Type?
Yep.
Oh,
For
I have a
anime
number of
and
new
stuff?
types still.
Yeah. So I got the Japanese New Type magazine that was all in Japanese, everything like that. And then the American version was maybe a year away from the Japanese version when they actually put something out. So I got the magazines together and I went into I believe at the time I was doing a class on what to do when you're checking prints at a printer, and
Right.
what to do when you need to make sure that everything is correct in the variations when you're printing for a client.
That's a good class.
And I took both magazines out and I was like, hey, and I went to my professor and I was like, take a look at these. And he's like, these are the same magazine, but one's in English and one's in Japanese. And I was like, yes. And I brought it in for show and tell. And
Right.
he's like, what do you mean? I was like, open it and find out. And like the entire class basically, it
Can go stop.
it literally became it like, hey, this is what this is what you need to look for if you're doing printing overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is what you have to look at if your client is overseas, because we had a lot of the kids in my program, because I went to an international college. It wasn't specifically American based. Like many of my classmates were from South America and Europe,
Right.
and a few were from Asia and Russia and like all over the places. So for us in the U.S., they were teaching them what to look for in the U.S. And I brought in an example of what will happen when you go back to your home country. What do you need to look out for? Type deal. And
Right.
that's basically where the class went.
That's so cool.
And it is actually interesting because I did compare both printing. The
Mhm.
American version was lower quality.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
I love
was.
those new types. I still have like 5 or 6 of them from the late 90s, early 2000s. And I found them in the basement when I was cleaning up. And they're in really good quality. They're really good condition.
I
But
think
you're
those are
right.
new too.
The condition of those, the quality of those pages, the paper they use, the printing technology, all of that stuff is just really great. And what's going on in those stories, that was something kind of bothered me too, was like I'd glean a lot of information from a new type article and then I'd read the English version of it. It'd be like a completely different thing. Like they were targeting on different things.
Like, especially when they talked about popular animes.
Yeah.
That transitioned over to America. It was very weird to see the article differences. Because like I had Japanese classmates that basically were like, looked at the articles and they were like, huh? Where are they getting? And back then we didn't really have good translators.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like today we have better translators which are able
there
to
are a lot
translate
more people who speak both languages fluently.
And I think that's the major difference is we have a lot of people that basically really went in depth to study on how to translate. We are still having people retranslating Russian novels, and stuff like that. So like you have to understand, like Russian, Japanese, Chinese, a lot of the times when people translate, they mistranslate because they don't get the same proper feeling.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, that there are like levels of fluency in a language, but it really takes a long time to fully understand all of the things in a language. For example, I've been studying Japanese with a YouTuber whose name is Misa Amo. And I guess she's British because she's got a very thick British accent in English, but she's fluent, absolutely fluent. She's Japanese, but she's fluent in English. And she likes to do a lot of, we don't say this in Japanese. Instead, we do it this way, and this is why.
Yeah.
And
I'm actually
that's
doing that with
extraordinarily useful to me.
Yeah,
Because I've
I'm
been
actually doing
speaking
that.
Japanese, but I
I'm
didn't
doing
know
that
that.
myself.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
You mean what?
I'm doing that myself.
Yeah.
With French though.
Right. But that's a way to learn it better for me. I recently learned that, I mean, like weird things like you can show you're upset with somebody by using the passive voice, which isn't something you use in English. But if you say, the cake was eaten by somebody in Japanese that way, so you say it in the passive voice instead of saying Colton ate my cake, it changes the meaning to mean more of like I'm aggravated that Colton ate my cake, but I'm not going to say it directly. Right. I'm not going to say it to Colton, so I just use this passive voice.
You're in the room. I'm going to just say it just so whoever's the
you know who
party
you
just
are.
goes.
See, in English, like we say that stuff, and it comes out like people think it's like we're being sarcastic or passive aggressive.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's
the
only
Japanese are notoriously
comedic.
passive aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, if you
culture.
want to be comedic passive aggressive, you say something like that while looking at the person.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a level of sarcasm in English.
But it doesn't.
And I think what you're
translate
describing,
across.
yeah, I think what you're describing is a little bit different because they sometimes, like even in anime, when they use the passive type stuff there, you'll see the character just like looking straight forward or something.
Right, not looking at Colton at all.
Well, there's also saying I know in Japan too. I don't remember the actual or the specific thing where you ask someone like, what is it? Pretty much like you ask them something and then they just go around the whole subject and never actually answer the question, and they just do that over and over and over, and you're just like, was that a yes? Was
Yeah, I
that a
have
no?
that problem right now with my Kyudo dojo. I'm having that problem. I asked what happened to the dojo. My sensei passed away. And I asked what happened to the dojo, and I'm getting the runaround, which means something bad has happened. And I know that. I know that when I ask these questions and I get the runaround, that means I'm not, that the dojo either doesn't exist anymore, or we don't meet, or something bad has happened, because they won't directly tell me that.
Right.
Even though this is my dojo and there was only like 12 of us, and this is a very tight group, it's still the same way. It's like she still won't talk to me directly. She's giving me sort of going end run around it, and I'm like, yep, I know what that means.
Yeah, normally that was a reaction that classmates from Japan would give if anything like death or something uncomfortable for them came up. That's usually when they would, like, even if though that they understood English and they knew that people would be willing to talk to them here, they just didn't do it.
Yeah, and actually that's why you lose things in translation. Another thing are social faux pas that don't translate. You're not supposed to make a lot of noise on trains. That's just a rule in Japan. But nobody tells you that. So what will often happen is you'll get foreigners who get on the train. Yeah, I'm on the train. I'll be there. And you'll see everybody's uncomfortable. But since Japanese don't look directly at you and aggressively say something, they all just look uncomfortable. And so the person who's doing it doesn't get the negative feedback that they're doing the wrong thing, right? But in an anime or a manga, you might see characters on the train And then you might see somebody come in on their phone blabbering at top volume, and then you see characters making uncomfortable statements. And you're like, I don't know what that all means. You translate that over to English, and now they're talking about the weather, and it's like, huh? But the subcontext was lost. All of that subcontext of these two characters are now uncomfortable because somebody's talking on the train. All of that gets lost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is, that's another one of those where it's like, if you've lived in Japan, if you know what the rules are in Japan, you get it right away. You read it, you see it, you're, oh my goodness. But then how do you translate it? Character A was talking about bad weather yesterday. Character B is talking about his car not starting. That's what the literal text bubbles say, right? So what do you do when you're translating it? How do you translate that? Do you translate with, I'm very uncomfortable, but the weather was bad yesterday?
I mean, there's like a lot of things specifically in Japan that when I went over there, that I realized
Yeah.
that are unspoken rules, and you just do them. Like
You just do
when
them.
you're gone on an elevator, or not an elevator, escalator or stairs, you stick to the left.
Right.
Oh, sorry, the right.
It's to the right.
America, it's the left.
Well, no, wait a minute. It's to the right in Tokyo, and on the east side, it's to the left in Kyoto.
Oh.
Yeah, welcome to not only are there rules, but there's sub rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you literally stick to the right the whole time, and if you want to go fast, you go in the left lane. And if you're blocking that side, which I've had people do that were with me, and I was like, guys, what are you doing? Get over, because I could see the person behind them just getting super mad.
Right?
You see it in their face, like, I want to get around you. I have somewhere to be. You're in
But I
my
can't
way.
Weave.
Yeah.
Socially
But
and
also, like,
incorrect.
no one like calls you out on your stuff too in
Nope.
Japan too. They just kind of like, this is a mild inconvenience.
Yes.
You're ruining my
Yeah.
life, but I'm not going to tell you that you're ruining my life.
I think that
a lot
the
of that's
weirdest-
pretty funny.
Yeah, the weirdest rule that I think I ever heard was opening a door.
What do you mean?
Holding an open
Oh, yeah.
door. Like basically, if you open a door to let someone else in before you, is something that you don't do.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was the weirdest one, because I was like, when I was being told this, it was of course by a classmate from Japan, and they wondered why I held the door open for them. Meanwhile, she didn't realize that if I had closed the door, the professor was going to lock her out.
Right. But that's one of the reasons why so many doors in Japan are automatic.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's
But
interesting.
why? What
how-
is the actual reasoning though behind why you don't hold the door for someone?
I think that the door holding is a Shinto like holdover.
Yeah,
I
that's
seem
what I
to
was
remember
wondering.
somebody telling me, but like there's so many things where after I would ask people like, why do you do this? And then they would ask me, well, why do you hold the door open for people? And I'd be like, good point. Because like I had to think about it. I'm like,
Mhm.
we just do. It's just part of our culture. And somewhere somebody was saying it was like a Shinto holdover that when you open the door, you're letting bad spirits through or whatever, yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada. So
Yeah.
if you hold the door for somebody, you're implying that they're a bad spirit. It's kind of like why you
that would make
never
more sense.
you never transfer food with chopsticks. You never do that. And, like if I'm like eating something and I'm like, here, Colton, try this. You never do that. And the reason is because during death ceremonies, after they've cremated people, they will take a special pair of chopsticks and pull the bones out and transfer them back and forth between bowls. So by doing the here, Colton, have food, you're reminding everybody, I am a bad spirit. You're reminding everybody about death ceremonies. And it would be the same thing as like us, I don't know, us laying flat on tables and closing our eyes. It'd be like, that's a little disturbing.
No, it makes sense
it-
though, because I
kinda
mean that's also
creepy.
one reason why they always give you like the little tiny plates
Yeah.
for like serving dishes. You put it on there and then you hand it.
Yes.
Makes a lot more
That's
sense.
exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to
Mhm.
transfer it by plate. You're also never supposed to put your chopsticks straight down, ever.
Yeah, that one's not just Japan. That's a
Put them
few.
sideways. this.
That's a few Asian cultures because
So a lot of this stuff originates from the original Chinese moving through. Yeah, Troy playing dead after getting his COVID shot. Exactly. My co-host from Geek Tank was doing that. He was, in the chair. I got my COVID shot. Not really.
All I know, I after my first COVID shot, I feel like I didn't get my superpowers, but then I was around people and I became very emotional very quickly. I guess it made something happen.
Something worked. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these rules where, and what's so funny is when you deal with Japanese culture and interface with the culture, their version of xenophobia / racism, however you want to call it, isn't the same as like here. It's we understand we have way too many rules and you'll never learn them all. But of course, because of that, we don't want you in our house.
Yeah.
And that's like the way it goes. And after a while, they, after they see that you know all the rules and you're not going to pass your food with chopsticks and goofy stuff like that, then they start to change over and you're more welcome. It's the reason why I have my adopted kid here all the time, is because, she's having some interface problems right now because I think she's spectrumy. That's my personal thought. And so she's missing all of these social cues, and there are a lot of social cues for her to miss. So she's getting busted all the time in Japanese culture because she's still a kid and you still yell at kids. And so I think she likes it better over here because she doesn't have to worry about it because she can chalk up anything to being Japanese, and that's, so it's like, instead of having to go, crap, I just missed that point, she can just say, oh, I'm Japanese, that's why I don't know this cultural thing.
Yeah.
I think that's why she likes it over here. She spends an awful lot of time here.
Also
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's I think it's just more we are like a cultural
hodgepodge
melting pot. Like we have so many different cultures coming in and out of America that it's really kind of hard to be like, no, this is just an American thing. No,
but we do have our own cultural rules.
We do.
Yeah.
I mean, we really do. Holding eye contact is a big deal. If you don't hold eye contact in our culture, you're lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
it's
a big deal.
In other cultures, it's a sign of disrespect too.
It is.
It's like you have to be very careful when you're communicating business wise. And I think me and Colton have actually talked about the whole eye contact thing. That makes me extremely nervous. Like I tend to I think we had this conversation where I was like, yeah, I tend to look at people's foreheads. It tricks people into thinking that I'm looking in their eyes.
Yep.
But also
that also is autistic spectrum response.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we've been so rough on people who have ADD through autism, is because the autistic kids and ADDers, they're uncomfortable about looking in each other's eyes. But American culture says you look your opponent in the eye.
Which leads me to the next thing where when people got upset with me when I was very, very young, they used to grab my chin and force me
to look.
And the thing is everyone's like, well, that's horrible. That's horrible. You don't do that to autistic children today. And I'm just like,
today.
Let me put it to you this way. I was raised in the 80s.
Yep.
There is a big difference.
And
my grandparents
they didn't even diagnose my ADD until I was 19 in 2000 or in 1992.
I didn't get my diagnosis until I was 33.
Right.
And let me put it to you this way. I was diagnosed with a whole bunch of other stuff beforehand.
Sure.
Because they couldn't figure out why is
what
this
the problem
person
was
in their 30s having difficulties communicating and understanding human beings.
Right.
And he's had this problem his entire life. Well, let's discuss your childhood. Oh, you were taught social graces. Oh, we know.
Yeah, I mean, and Southerners, all of us Southerners, we get that lesson of social graces, things like having to figure out which fork to put on the plates or on the table and where the knives go.
I had to clean my grandparents' silver.
Right? And you have
And
to
while
do
you
all of
do
that
it-
stuff because
while you do it, yeah.
I mean, that's a Southern thing. We all learn this stuff. But the other thing is, like, I had an uncle who would make me practice shaking hands because I wasn't doing it right. And so he would make me stand up and shake hands with him, look him in the eye, don't dead fish, as he would say,
Dude,
all these things he taught me because I wasn't getting it. And I remember that stuff. And some of it, like my mom would do the same thing, grab my head and make me look at her in the eyes. And stuff like that. I remember that. And some of it was probably like, you don't do that, man. Yeah, no, but I mean, I'm glad she did in one way because I can look people in the eyes now. And that is important because, like I said, you don't look people in the eyes, you're lying. That's our that's a cultural thing.
And if you actually talk to, if you actually, I'm sorry, if I'm interrupting,
it's all good.
I'm just like, it's like one of those subjects, like, if you watch or anything that Temple Grandin talks about when she talks about her childhood, like she talks about the fact that her mom put in a lot of effort to make sure that she wasn't going to be recommended to go into an institution.
Yep. Well, and
that is a big thing.
When I deal with my kid who has ADD as well, there are a number of things that I say, look, here's the deal. These things you can just do. It doesn't matter that that it's not actually accurate in society and yada yada yada. Most people won't care. But these things, we've just got to teach you to do them. And I know it's going to be rough and I know it's going to be hard and it's not going to be easy, but we've got to. And there's no way around it, because he also doesn't like to look people in the eyes and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, dude, we gotta, because you don't want people thinking you're lying all the time.
Yeah.
And that's it's just a reality. And because it's so ingrained in our culture, nobody thinks about it. And I was actually really lucky. My mom she had most of a psychology degree. And, but she got pregnant in her senior year in the Bible Belt and had to go visit her sister in Mexico. And that ruined her entire bachelor's degree in psychology. So there you go. That's my mom. That's why my mom was bitter and angry about all that stuff. She's like, no, this sucks. And it was just because she got drunk one night at a party, she got drunk at a party. She was being stupid. She was a college kid, it's what they do. But
like I have mild ADD, and if you ever have a full conversation with me, you will always see me. My eyes will always be moving around because I see something move, and my brain's like, "Oh, what's that?"
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of ADDers who have varying degrees, they'll end up with that same thing. I mean, I sit there and talk, and I'm like looking over here and looking over here, looking over here. I'm still with you guys. I'm still listening. It's all good. And actually, it's perfectly reasonable. And the funny part is that there's more and more of us every generation, but nobody knows why. They'll just sit there and say, "Yeah, I don't know. Pepper's not trustworthy." And they'll be like, I don't know why I feel that way.
I have literally gone into interviews and I felt great that I did them. But then if I ask for feedback, they were like, they didn't think you were genuine.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, I don't know how to really possibly bring up the fact of any of my diagnosis, because technically if I say anything to a job place, I have literally gotten into jobs and then I've had issues with like mental hangups and stuff, and I've had to talk to them about what's going on with me. And the moment that happens, like there's an utter dynamic shift on how they treat me in a negative way.
We have a stigma. We have a very big stigma in our culture about mental illness.
It's like almost like how do I want to say? it's like the moment that you say it, that they don't look at you as a normal human. They think that you're a damaged puppy, and I hate it.
Yep.
I hate the feeling.
It's interesting that that's one of the things that Mary Cole is talking about in the Lady Astronaut series. The first female in space has anxiety, and she's on tranquilizers, and it's 1950. So this is the biggest secret ever. Nobody wants to release that, because if the press gets a hold of that, nobody will ever let her continue to fly. They'll take her license away. They'll take her ability to fly away. She won't be able to go to space anymore. You know, yada yada yada.
Mhm.
We're really stigmatized against mental illness, and I can see kind of some of that, but because, I mean, we have some very negative things that occur because of mental illness in our culture, and I get that, but those extreme edge cases occur because we don't treat the minor cases when they start.
Yeah.
You know, so you end up with people who go all the way out to the edge out there, and then it's like, well, okay.
It's kind of like the old way of doing it, like where you had a mental illness and mental illness ran in your family. If you asked your family members, no, mental illness is not in our family. However, you have, like, I have 8 siblings.
Yeah.
And of those 8 siblings, 6 of us
have problems.
Or possibly all 8 of us have some form of mental hangup.
Right.
That naturally occurred.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. ADD apparently is obviously to some degree handed down. My dad has it, my son has it, and I have it. And
I mean, I know my dad probably has a form.
Brent's over there talking about how the military and eye contact, you know, that's a different critter. And that's actually a reason why a lot of us will join the military, is because you only have to, they don't want you looking at the drill sergeant. They don't want you looking, you know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to look at people. You know, there's a lot of don't
be
look
aware
at
of surroundings.
Right.
He's right. Yeah. Like you have to be, because if you
easier.
get into a combat area, you need to know what's around you.
It makes it a whole lot easier. But when I look at people, it is an act that was put on that I learned how to do when I was 13 or 14.
Yeah.
You know, people will walk into my office and I will look at them and everything like that. And in my head, I'm acting like some actor that on some TV show that I saw. And I'm literally taking on a facade because it's not comfortable. I would rather just sit here and look at the ground, and you walk in and talk to me and I talk to you. And
yeah. And I think, what was it? One of my favorite Spectrum actors is actually Anthony Hopkins.
And he said that too. Yeah, that's exactly what he does.
And the thing is it made a lot of sense, because when I was growing up, and I don't know about you two, but like me and my sister that I share a birthday with in particular, we were specially taught. Her experience was a little bit different. My family kept saying you shouldn't show so much emotion. Mm-hmm. They were very Irish, British, and French about that. However, I could never turn my emotions off because my father would cry a lot in front of me. So I was never shown, like, like everyone's like version of their father when they, like, from my time period was like, they were like, oh, my father never cried. Right. And I was like, my father cried if you dropped his hat incorrectly. Like, no, that's not how often I heard him cry or say cry. But I also realized, like, over time, there was a tactic being used with that crying. So not a good example.
No, but still cool. I mean, cool that that's the case, because, of course, nobody in my family cried, and now I don't cry. Yeah. Like, ever. And it's really hard. Oh, I lost Colton. Poor Colton. He'll probably come back. He came back. He pushed the wrong button, I'll bet you.
I don't know. Sorry.
Hey, I've done that before.
I was just sitting here listening. I was like, yep. And then I was like, everybody's frozen. What's going on? It was me.
It's an imperfect science.
Yeah. But like I was talking to my sister who about this, and her version was basically she was taught that she needed to suppress her emotions
Mm-hmm.
as well. But she literally took the advice and kept doing it, and it made things worse for her as an adult
Mhm.
to some degree. And I think what it was I attended therapy at a very early age and a lot more frequently, and I
Mhm.
think that I'm not sure how frequently she got hers, because we were all in some form of therapy. Like it's a very weird experience because like we were always in therapy as children, um, and and when you say it out loud, you realize on how abnormal your childhood really was
Right.
when you try to like associate with other people, and you're like, well, I never did that. I never did that as a child. And they were like, oh, well, this is blah 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 blah, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like that doesn't seem like something children would do. And
Mhm.
and for us it was like I think a prime example of this was um being able to just be a child in an environment with our parents and have like our parents just like basically have us do something without us asking why we're doing it. Like we always asked like, hey, what's going on, why are you asking us to do this? Like that is something that we were taught to do. And other people were like, oh no, I just did stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like,
We're all nodding a lot.
oh.
I'm going to kind of cut you short a little because we are 1 minute over at this point in time.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
real quickly, no, it's all good. You're fine, man. I'm just we gotta make sure real quick though. Do you have goals for this coming week, Pepper?
Finish up the paint testing that I have been doing. I made some paint for this past week and I'm testing 3 styles of paint pans made by a Netherlands-based paint maker and paint pan maker.
Yeah, I saw those mini
the-
pans. They're kind of cool.
Yeah, the pans themselves, like I have a dot pan and I have a quarter pan, which is a half pan that's been divided in half, but like up. So it's like basically like half of what you'd normally get a pan, but you can still put it in a pan tin.
Right.
And then there's 3 other styles of pans that I am testing for him that, and I have to give him feedback still. They have like ridges and like jet outs to kind of block the paint from
To lock
dislodging
it
from the
from coming up.
sides, and it locks in the paint.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
That's
So, okay, so that's your battle plan. Do you have a comic plan that you're working on?
Yes, I need to finish up a story. I'm now back working on like Kiki Poppy.
Okay, good.
Finally, and in between that, I have a few other projects that I'm being paid to do. So those usually come first.
Right. Same with me. What about you, Colton?
school.
Cool.
So this week we have a chandelier we're making 3D modeling.
Nice.
So that'll be fun. And then what were my other ones? My anatomy class, we're working on the glutes right now, so we can
So it's a
understand the
butt day
muscles and the
for you guys. Yeah.
butts and legs. And then the other one's just a figure drawing class. So that is the clothes figures. So drawing people in clothes, like
That's
Oh,
rough.
it's a lot of stuff to do though. But
Yeah, that's what I
I
always
was
say.
kind
I
of
always say
hoping-
drawing people in clothes is rough.
I enjoy it. But
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
still, it's you're right though. It is rough. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Like especially when you're like right now he's trying to get us to start thinking with our what I want to call the visual imagination, where you can look at something and start drawing and looking away from the page and start drawing, but then realizing after the time's up, you could still technically finish off the shoe or finish off the hand because you realize that the hand was in a right angle that you had in your brain the whole time.
Right.
And he's trying to get us to that point, which I'm better off than most. But
Yeah.
there are a lot of times where I'm like, I'm just going, and then he's like, all right, pencils down. And I was like, I have no idea what was in this picture anymore.
Right.
It's something called antiphasia. Basically, you have to look at a reference in order to see properly. If you cannot see it in your mind, that means that you have it, and a lot of people do. It's nothing to be like, you can do that, but there's a lot of things that it can help people if you struggle with it. There are videos. There's a very popular artist that has made a career at talking about that.
My stepmom seems to be that way. She cannot visualize anything.
Mine's
It's
not
great.
really the visualizing part of it. It's more I think it's personally for me, it's how involved I am in my own brain with this like project or piece.
Yeah.
Like if I'm actually entertained with it, I'm like, oh, this is keeping me entertained. Like I retain a lot more of the information more while I'm drawing. But if I'm just doing it just to get it done, like I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Like by the time they're like, all right, pencils down, I'm just like, yep. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, but yep, I
Yeah.
know exactly what this is for.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, that's that's one of those things that's rough. I remember doing that in college too. But it sounds like your professors are heading into a zone that's actually kind of cool. Like that's something I'm doing with my show here is things like practicing every morning to draw straight lines.
Yeah.
I mean, like, keeping your elbow and your wrist off of the table so that you're not trying to draw a straight line this way, like a windshield wiper, and ending up with a curve,
Right.
and things like that, which is like, you never think about that stuff until you have to practice it. And then you practice it and you're like, gosh, how did I draw before this? I don't know. It's like really rough.
Oh, I totally get that.
Yeah. Yeah. My goal is to have Super Deformed Morel explain how in-flight works, the in-space flight that my ships do. So that's my goal. Okay. Brent has a goal to move and have his PC set up so that he can join us again on Friday. So that's a good one. I'm kind of bummed about Brent moving, but I actually was thinking about this, and Brent and I have really pretty much only formed a really secure relationship here during COVID. So him moving to Kansas isn't going to change our relationship at all. He's still just going to be here.
I do have a goal that, because normally if we're in the office, Bill chimes into our conversation every now and then. So
Right.
Bill has a goal of setting up our server and moving his PC over as well, like Brent. However, the server setup will allow us to get our websites back online and get my store open.
There you go. Open a store.
So,
There you go.
Yeah.
Stores are good.
So
yes.
hopefully
Good for
we will
artists.
all meet here again next Friday, and we can check in and see where we all were on that. So are you far enough along, Colton, now in school that you don't have the gigglers anymore in there now that you're doing butts? Because I think about that every time. Because like every time I've gone to college, like first semester and second semester is always full of gigglers. The people who are embarrassed talking about breasts
penis.
or that's a penis, or oh my gosh, it's butts. And you're like, we got to work. After you draw 50 of those, you're not going to be laughing anymore.
I'm not gonna lie.
I have to laugh because you said the word gigglers.
Yeah.
I think the only time I really giggled was when we had a female model come in and it turned out to be another art teacher from the college
Oh,
doing nudes.
That's
for
cool.
us, and then one of the other kids from another track program came in and he modeled for us as well. And
Yeah.
then we had and that's like the two times I giggled because I knew the person and I didn't necessarily want to see the person naked, but it was just funny.
My wife did that for a long time. That was how she made extra money in college by going over to the art department and
Really?
posing for them. Yeah.
That's cool.
As a student.
The third time that I laughed was, unfortunately, the artist must have had some very aggressive issues with some toilet paper. And everyone basically focused on the fact that she had toilet paper still stuck.
Oh no.
That's pretty
So
brutal.
everyone's images pretty much were nothing but that.
Yeah. Yeah, and Brent, you're right. So this is one of my pet peeves in the universe of the world, is that there are people who think that art degrees are an easy degree to
Yeah.
get. So you can just get a bachelor's degree. It's actually why I wanted specifically to get a Bachelor of Science, not a Bachelor of Arts. And so even though my degree is now bogus, when it wasn't bogus, it was a BS, not a BA. And that was a big deal because I didn't want people thinking that I went to art school to get an easy degree. I wanted them thinking that I went to art school because I was serious, because I'm a serious artist.
Mhm.
That's my calling. That's what I'm supposed to do in life. And so, I didn't go to art school because I couldn't really cut it at business school, or I couldn't cut it at math school or whatever. And I wanted people to know that. But when you do the Bachelor's of Arts, you get those people who are just there thinking it's an easy A. And I hate those guys.
Yeah, it's one. The thing is like I have a BFA,
Uh-huh.
and that's why I ended up going to get an MBA,
Right.
and that's why I have my MBA, because I would
Same
go
thing.
into interviews in the moment that I said BFA, like they started treating me like, oh, you went to this because there was nothing else that you could do.
Right.
And I'm
Easy A. And you're like,
it was not an easy A.
no. Well, and that's the thing, is like, that's what's so sad.
That's the
I know-
stipulation, though, of what people think art is still. It's just,
Yeah.
oh, it's easy
Yeah.
for everybody.
It's a hobby. It's easy.
Yeah,
But I know
was
for a
even-
fact that Colton's in college right now because he wants to learn art, not because of an
Yeah.
easy A. And that's the thing, is like, it aggravates me. All three of us get bitten by that. And all three of us are hardcore artists. We are artists. That's our job. That's what we were called to do. Some people are
Yeah.
called to work on computers. Some people are called to work on whatever, but we were called to work on art. It was our job.
Oh, this weekend, for either one of you, just for references, I'm going to be making strawberry sourdough bagels.
That
that's
sounds
cool.
amazing.
It does sound awesome.
Let me know after the show if you guys want any, so I can make sure that I have like a full 12 batch, so I can divide it up.
Yeah, I'm not actually a strawberry fan, so
I'm gonna tell
I'm
you
out.
right now, I'll still take it because I like eating things people make.
He's in college. He likes eating.
Oh, there's that too. But no,
I
that
mean-
sounds awesome. I want to try it.
It like I made them last week, and I think the only feedback I got so far was I need to chop up the the dried strawberries more, like make them smaller. That's about it. But
Okay.
because of the way that they're cooked and everything, and that they're like really like they're dried with like sugar coating and stuff, because they're baked in the bagel,
Mhm.
they come out like it's like little pockets of jam.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm in.
Jammy, like jammy strawberries. So I mean, but guys also got my plain bagels.
I
and
like
a
the
couple
plain
of other
bagels.
flavored
Those
ones.
rocked.
Yeah,
I ate them
So-
for days.
yeah.
And then my
yes.
wife had to fight over one. It was actually really funny.
I had to fight.
Whap, whap.
Battle to the
She
death.
liked him too. If you can pass muster with the hippie, then you're doing good. She likes the way you source your ingredients and stuff like that. She was really into that. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
all jokes aside,
But yes, I'd be down.
he's like,
Yeah, just
I'm a
let me
poor
know.
college
I mean,
student.
I will.
I'll eat anything.
Well, it kind of
I
like
will
I've been giving away bagels like every week. So
I will say this though,
the bad
with
hands get them a lot.
with the college thing, being 30, like over 30 and going now,
Yeah.
way different compared to like now I understood because when I first went back in 09, there was a guy in there that was around 34, like he was, I would say late 30s, early 40s. And now I actually understand how he probably felt being around like all these 18, 19-year-olds, like young 20s, and they're all like, and also realizing that I've done so much more than half these kids ever have achieved yet.
Yeah.
Just within like technically 5-10 years, like the 5 years that we just did Red Team Go stuff, like I was like, holy crap, I've done so much more that I didn't even realize that I wasn't doing anything back when I was that young.
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
one
well,
of
and
my
that's
favorite.
that was what I did too. Was the same thing. I went to college at CU Boulder when I was 18, and then dropped right out, and then decided to work in the private sector for like a decade, and then went back in 05, and I was like 35 years old at that point in time, 33 years old at that point. And I go back into college, and there's all these youngins around me, and they're all like, "Let's get drunk," and I'm like, "Let's do our homework."
Like you're wrong. I like a good drink from time to time, but also
I do too, but not when I've got 3 classes worth of homework to do.
I gotta finish all this off
Yeah.
now. Oh, I'm gonna drink and do my homework.
But
Yeah,
see,
it's-
at 33, you can drink and do your homework. At 18, you just drink and then throw up.
Yeah.
And it's like, the homework part falls off the plate.
I mean, there was times when I went, because I went right after college, and my options, if I dropped out, like my options, if I called my dad and let him know I was leaving school, I would have been driven straight to a recruitment office.
Right.
I was not allowed to drop out. Like my
God, you're
parents
really
weren't
that
allowed.
far in a Southern family. Holy crap!
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's
It's
rough.
a very
Oh,
Southern
yeah, no,
thing. It's
no,
either
no,
hey, you
I-
go join the military, or you actually do something with your life.
Yeah, like and people are like, wait, like your family's from the north, and I was like, my family may be from the north, but our family is not structured like the north. Like, yeah, joining the Marines. My options were Army or Air Force. Those two.
Yeah. You
Specifically.
can't join the Marines or the Navy. Yeah.
I was not.
And that was
my
one of those
sister-
things that was funny because I was a Navy guy all my life. I've been a Navy guy. So, I mean,
So
it's like,
It explains so much about you. now.
Yeah,
I know, right?
It does actually. That does. I mean, you also have to understand. Like, my sister was allowed to go into the Navy. Like, they didn't really put any
restrictions on her.
pressure on her. But my one grandfather was in the Army. He worked as a cook in Korea, and the other grandfather was in the Air Force, and he actually built part of the Air Force Academy in Colorado.
Nice.
Which is cool.
So
I hate to cut people short,
So,
but
but
that was
we're
my
going.
wife calling because she usually waits until after my show to call me and talk to me during lunch. And so she's eating her lunch right now. And so if I don't get off this phone call, I'm not going to be able to talk to her.
Well,
Have
your
her join. It's fine. No, I'm
Right?
It's fine. It's fine.
She's
Go
not
ahead,
an artist.
fine.
She'll just sit here and go, "What are you guys doing?"
This is what you do with your Fridays,
Right? This is what you do with your friend. So I'm going to go on ahead and get going. And you two can move over to Discord if you want to keep talking, because I'm going to close this window down. So
I
can talk to her.
I think I'm just gonna head over. I need to get some work started, so I don't think
That
I have
sounds
time
fair.
for Discord this morning. I'm very sorry,
It's-
Colton.
No, you're good. I still like I haven't
You've got
had
homework.
breakfast.
You've got
I
butts to
also-
draw,
I got
man,
homework. I also need to call my boss and tell him that I'm not coming in today because I still feel like
because you
shit.
suck at like Moderna. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Moderna
you've
decided
got
to
butts to
take
draw too. So I'm not going to let that go, because there's an inner 12-year-old in me that will always find that funny, no matter what. No matter how professional I am, there's the inner 12-year-old that will always find butts funny. So, okay. It was great having you guys with me today. Thanks for being here,
Yeah,
Brent.
thanks for
I'll
the
see you
invite.
next Friday, hopefully. I hope
All
you
right.
make your move, and I hope you set up just fine, and I hope everything is good.
Good
And
luck.
be safe out there, Brent. Really. And we'll talk to
Safe
you
drive
later.
out as well.
Yeah. And I'll see you all next week. I'll see you, Pepper, on Wednesday for Watercolor Wednesday. And Colton, you can join us on Wednesday if you want to. So absolutely. But there's no requirement here. It's not pressure. There's no pressure. There's only pressure on Pepper. Until okay,
Because
see
you made it a routine, and also you make the watercolors.
all right. It works.
Well, I
Okay.
will let you know. Bye.
Okay. See you guys later.
All right.
Have
Take
a
care.
good day and keep your eyes on the stars, everybody else. Bye-bye. Computer, good night.